Hey, it's JK. My friends, it's time. Time to do the Mega Archery challenge in Dark Souls 2. As much as I feared doing the Mega Magic run in this game, this one just might have given me even more cause for concern, and once we get to the latter phases of this, you'll see why. Trust me, this run contains some of the harder fights I've done in these multi-cycle challenges. In case you're unfamiliar, here's how this challenge will work. First, we're going to beat Dark Souls 2 using only bows, then move to New Game Plus and beat that with only crossbows, and finally move to New Game Plus where we will only use Greatbows, utilizing all the archery tools in this game for their own separate playthrough. I start each new cycle with only the basic weapon in its class, and also avoid using upgrade materials until the point we would naturally acquire them. Bonfire aesthetics also won't be used because I think it muddies the waters too much if, for example, I go to New Game Plus, but some of the areas are already at New Game Plus level. We also won't be using the Estus at all because this is a new game run, and new of course stands for never use Estus. To get the run started, we call our character Robin Derp. If this guy was going to steal something, what do you think it would be? Let me know in the comments below. We choose the Bandit class, which feels appropriate, and also because it starts with a short bow, 25 arrows, and great fashion. We take Human Effigy as our gift. First we run to Majula, then run to this tower, where Dragon Rider decides to hide in the waters below, granting us a bunch of souls. In Forest of Fallen Giants, we try to cheese a hollow by getting him to come fall down here, but it doesn't work. It's fine though as I sneak past when he goes for a piss in the corner. We buy a fragrant branch from Melentia and get the Silver Serpent ring +1. Souls will be important in this run as we need to buy ammo, so this will help a lot. Controversially, I used the Dragon Rider soul to get more souls to buy Lenegrass Key. I actually opted not to use the Dragon Rider bow on this run as I've used it loads before anyway, so it's good to keep things fresh. We open up Zero Lenegrass shop and buy loads of arrows. He only has a limited amount of the stronger iron arrows, so we need to buy wood arrows as well. Well, no idea how this is going to go, but let's head to the last giant. The damage is crap, but his attacks are slow, so he's pretty easy to dodge and snipe. At one point, I thought I dodged his full forward slam, but turns out he farted just as he landed, knocking me down with its sheer force. Anyway, we take him down with a few more shots in a row, causing this giant to breathe his last breath. With the souls we gained, we level up both Vigor and Dex several points for more health and damage. I also buy some shards, but don't upgrade our bow just yet. I decided to use the trick to jump down to the Fire Salamander pit because down here is the Hawk Ring, an essential item for a bow build as it increases our bow range. I also grabbed the old Iron Key while we're down here for the DLC later. Well, it's about time for us to pursue some progression, so we engage this heavily armored bro. I'm sure our wooden arrows will do great against his thick armor. 17 damage. Wow. Okay, as this isn't going to be as quick as I thought, I decided to head back here and convince these knights to hide in the water with their buddy Dragon Rider, and then grab the Ring of Binding to keep my health higher. I now buy more Titanite to get the bow up to +3. After getting smashed a couple more times by the pursuer, I realized I had forgotten something. There are actually some fire arrows lying around in the area. It's only 10, but it might just make the difference. I did back up my save before this fight, as I didn't want to waste them. Now that is some better damage. After landing all 10 arrows, the pursuer was now at about 60 to 70% health. As our bow is upgraded, we now do 35 damage per shot, which is still low, but not the end of the world. I know his attacks fairly well, so after a lot of dodging and a total of 62 wooden arrows, this Pursue Chef cooks his last dish. But speaking of dishes, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Factor. Being a working parent, tiredness hits me more often than not, and sometimes I fall into the trap of getting overpriced and often low-quality takeout because I'm literally too exhausted to cook. Well, this is where Factor comes in clutch. Factor provides chef-prepared meals that are ready in 2 minutes, eliminating the hassle of prepping, cooking, and clearing up. They offer a variety of different meal plans to suit you, like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, Vegan, Veggie, and more. A total of over 35 meal options per week are factored in. They also offer a variety of options for smoothies and juices to help keep the fridge stocked up and make snacking easy. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code JKL50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code JKL50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Thank you very much again, Factor, for sponsoring this video. We gracefully drop from this eagle for a perfect landing, and then Bastille the dull ember from this chest. With all our souls, we level up ADP. Although dodging may not be as important with a ranged build, using healing items fast definitely will be. I grab the other useful items in the early Lost Bastille, like this smelly AF branch, and then have a barrel of laughs opening up the way to Macduff. As well as having chests full of useful upgrade materials around him, Macduff sells the longbow, infinite iron arrows, and large titanite shards. We upgrade the bow to +5 with the upgrade materials on us. We needed one more point in strength to wield it, so we get that and then pop some souls to buy more iron arrows. On testing the bow, I actually struggled to hit this dog close range for some reason. That's not a good sign. But let's stop barking up the wrong tree and go in a different direction for some helpful items. First, we help sober up this stoned woman, run past these green ganking ghouls to get the gunfire, and finally make it to the Shaded Woods, where I grab the Chloranthy Ring +1 before the ghost of Ian the Sanctuary Guard kills me. I also equip the Ring of Blades here, as I realized it does actually boost my damage on this run. I told this warrior I was going to kill him, but he knew I was lying. We take him out shortly after for the Fang Key. With this, we can go free our weaponsmith friend who I found out about from Ornif Extra Life. Thankfully, the information she provides is much more accurate. Right, time to take on Najka, probably the most difficult fight so far. Well, this really tailed off quickly. Okay, she did break out of it by tunneling, but a few more shots and another boss is complete. With her souls, I buy more large titanite and get the longbow to +6, and pump some more points into strength and dex. Onwards to Bright Cove Stone Seldora. So normally the biggest issue for bow runs is multi-enemy boss fights because you can only aim or lock onto one enemy at once, and I'm not ashamed to say that I died to Congregation. Okay, maybe I'm a little ashamed. My tactic here was to take out the little ones first, as they go down in just a couple of hits, and this means less targets to lock onto. With just the Magus and the Priest remaining, I focused my fire on the Magus, who took a pretty hefty amount of damage from each shot, and once he fell, taking out the Priest was also pretty straightforward, as they ended up with a large amount of arrows congregating inside their bodies. The cove itself was quite chill to go through, as you can just snipe all these annoying mages from a distance, which is rather pleasant. Of course, Bowman Guthrie decided to show up to ruin my day, and wasn't even polite enough to drop an Avalyn upon his death. Ornifex, however, was kind enough to sell as our old favourite, the compound bow, and also has an infinite supply of fire arrows. These will be very helpful because next up is a boss I was quite afraid of. Thanks to needing both hands for the bow, I actually have to fight this boss with a torch for the first time in years, and the first attempt didn't go too well. No, running away from the spiders wasn't going to work. I actually had to kill them for once, which honestly wasn't so bad. It did take 2 hits per spider, and they do unfortunately respawn. With the spiders dead, this is probably even easier than usual because we don't even need to get close to do damage. A few more arrows and we can head onwards from this fight. I was going to duke it out with this guy, but instead I just shot him a couple times and grabbed the key. With the souls from Freya, I upgraded the compound bow up to +6, ready for use. Screw it, let's use the few chunks we have to get it to +7. Might as well. The compound bow does have more scaling in strength, so I also pumped some points into that for even more damage. Hopefully anyway. Lastly, I went to restock on fire arrows and some iron arrows when suddenly I actually got invaded. Fighting this guy, I was so confused by what was going on as it seemed like he was hitting me with his fists from several meters away before I realized he had the rings that make your weapons invisible. I don't think that accounts for this hit killing me though. Anyway, because I have issues focusing, I now head to get Lycia, whatever, to open the way to Huntsman's Copse. I really wanted to enjoy this area, but this guy in particular was a real stick in the mud. After taking care of the other hangers-on and teaching this moth how to fly, we show no mercy to Rowena and then grab the key. There's another lizard that drops some useful upgrade materials here as well. There's also some useless shard item, I'm not really sure what that's for. But anyway, Skeleton Lords. Now, you might think with our build this fight is going to be kind of tedious, and yeah, it is. Taking out the Lords and the Bone Wheel skeletons is fine, but the following hordes of skeletons take ages to kill. The fact they have shields makes it even worse. It's pretty much just us running around the room in a circle, gradually picking them off one by one, until at last this bonerous task is complete. Back in the Hunter's Dream, we upgrade the composite bow to +7, which we could have done before that boss, but I forgot, I mean purposefully didn't do to make it harder. Yeah. I whipped back to Brightstone to get some more upgrade materials from this crystal lizard, and then I took this basilisk for a spin. The actual way we want to go is Harvest Valley, where I take some well-deserved revenge on these desert pyromancers for all the times they blew me up in the past. This poor pet demon was feeling pretty sick, so we had to take him to the Covette, where unfortunately he had to be put down. Rest easy, big fella. With the windmill burned and Gilligan helped off his island, it was time for Benea the Mythful Queen. Fire arrows thankfully do a pretty nice amount of damage to her, and despite her attempts to stay ahead, she goes down in short order. At this point, I decided to level up some of the support stats like health, endurance, and ADP, as I felt they'd become more useful as the run progressed. Before we head into Iron Keep, there's actually some stuff from No Man's Wharf I want to get. First, I call the ship and then meet up with Lonesome Gavlan. By meeting him here, and then again in Harvest Valley, he moves to the Doors of Pharos where he now has an infinite supply of poison arrows. Poison is great in Dark Souls 2, so we'll be using these a lot from now on. I made great use of them to take out Dennis and Sharon when they tried to ruin my day in Iron Keep, before sniping down the Alon Knights and making our way to Smelter Demon. Smelter Demon, as you probably know, is quite vulnerable to poison, something I still don't really understand as it really looks like he shouldn't be, but I'm certainly not complaining. The poison really carries this one. I did come close to dying right at the end due to a poor decision on when to fire, but thankfully he dies from the poison mid-swing, ending the term of Theodore Rosersmelt. With a few more levels in our pocket, we go back to Smelter Demon's boss room and take down this guy in a large pursuit of armor for the Ring of Blades +1 for a little bit of extra damage. Proceeding yonder, we deshell this turtle and prepare for the next of the big four, the Old Iron King. We can actually start shooting him before he even gets close, and he's vulnerable to poison, which is handy. Any ranged build works great because you don't need to wait for him to slam his hands down to attack, you can just happily fire away. Although sometimes he fired away at us. But a few more shots here and there, and we dethrone this king to claim another great soul. Our stats are starting to look more respectable now, so let's go clear some of the other areas, like No Man's War for example. By this point, Flexile Sentry was an absolute joke. After less than 60 seconds he died, and I could tell he had a lot of resentryment for me. Don't worry, he'll get his revenge later. We ride the boat, take the shortcut route in the Lost Bastille to skip the Sentinels for now, and make our way to the Lost Sinner boss room, but not before watching the mummies do their traditional dance. Why do their legs bend like that when they run? I actually had forgotten to get the Bastille key, so opted to fight the Sinner in the dark for once. I'm not sure why, but I had convinced myself before that it wasn't possible to lock on without the light, but turns out it is, it's just only possible from a short range. Anyway, this was pretty easy. Between poison and fire arrows, we were able to assassinate this boss in short order. We level some more endurance and health before dropping down the well and activating the Grave of Saints bonfire. That's just for later use though, as for now, we're going to head down to the gutter and then to the Black Gulch. For some reason, a woodland child decided to make me the victor in our fight by unlifing himself. Not really sure what happened to him there. I'm going to go out on a limb though and bet this next boss will be pretty straightforward. The Rotten isn't the most challenging of bosses, but he does have one unique aspect. You can cut off his arms. I was curious if this was possible with the bow, and it was. I actually managed to sever both of them, leaving him completely disarmed as I finished him off with some arrows to the face. We then get treated to an NPC encounter and level up a bunch of random stats with very little thought put into them. I now run to grab another Titanite chunk from this chest, giving me enough to get the compound bow up to +10 thanks to the slab from Congregation. I killed this lizard for a boltstone for later, got shoulder tackled by this falcon guy. Seriously, what is this attack? And then opened up the Shrine of Wind. Wait, what? But I killed all the... Oh my god, I forgot to grab the soul from Freya's boss room again! The Emerald Herald didn't have Shan a lot of useful things to tell me, and then Forlorn invaded me to try to ruin my attempt to enter the castle, but luckily with a well-placed shot, I killed this guard and got the door opened. He still tried to take me out, but his attempts were in fact forlorn, as he died quickly when it was one-on-one. Chancellor Welliger is here, and after skipping mountains of absolutely useless dialogue, he now sells us magic arrows and lightning arrows. These will be very useful as we go on. With the first bonfire activated, I go infuse the compound bow with lightning to go with our newly acquired lightning arrows, of which I bought more of. I made my way through the castle, grabbing the frozen flower, shooting Nashandra in her smug face, and entered the Twin Dragon Rider boss fight, which was... I mean, look, this fight is a joke. These two are ride or die bros, and in this case, it was die. I mowed them down quickly, and we move on. These mana kindreds of rot get mowed down, helping me to activate the golem to open the way. We grab some absolutely useless items before preparing to firmly enter the King's Passage. Now it's time for Mirror B. There's a niche as hell reference for you. This guy is another in the long line of bosses that in almost any other Souls game would probably be immune to poison, but here in Dark Souls 2, they are in fact vulnerable to it. I actually didn't even bother messing about with the summon and just focused on shooting LGK with poison arrows and letting his health drain away while I ran like a hero. I actually even let him get out a second summon for the lols, but the poison activated one last time and he died seconds later. Yay, Shrine of Amana! With a few more levels under our belt, we proceed. Honestly, if you ever struggle with this area, I'd highly recommend the bow build. Picking enemies off one by one from a distance makes this whole experience way less annoying, particularly this end section with all the archdrakes. Being able to shoot this guy without the mage aggroing is so unbelievably cathartic. You can even shoot these guys, although they both aggro, you can at least get one close to death before they reach you, and then hopefully finish them off quickly. I actually killed this hippo guy for once also, because I could not for the life of me remember what was down here. Once it was all ogre for him, I found a dress and a life ring +2. Kinda worth it? Maybe? With the next bonfire unlocked, I had quite a fun ranged battle with the peculiar Kinder Egg, but sadly he didn't have a worthwhile surprise inside. The Demon of Dong is up next. Or was, I should say. This fight again was just crazy easy. Fun fact, the demon being in water means it takes extra lightning damage. Poison also helps to keep the damage going while it's hidden in its shell, which speeds things up. The old frog croaks shortly after. After taking out this extremely ungrateful hollow, we return to Medulla again to level up. Faith? What? Okay, trust me, there is a reason for it. And also it ties into why we've been avoiding a lot of optional bosses to get to the endgame quickly. We pop some more souls for even more faith, Audia jump scares us again, and we make our way through... Oh no. We can't break the stones! Okay, luckily hits from bones will break our stones, but words will never hurt us. Wait, what? I get the shortcut unlocked for the area, and now it's time for the big bell bashing bro Belstad. Though statistically, our damage is definitely enough to take him down. He does hit very hard, but being at range helps to give us breathing room to avoid his more dangerous attacks. When he phase transitions, you can't really get much damage in on him, but we can still use the time to proc poison, which he is vulnerable to, even though he has a higher resistance than most. In only a couple of minutes, this boss Felstad, and the fight ends. We run past Vendrick to put our finger in his ring, and then level up Faith even more. We now enter Audia's keep and grab a petrified dragon bone outside and another one inside before activating the hidden bonfire. Weird fact, these enemies can be poisoned despite taking an acid bath here with no issue. Anyway, we grab yet another petrified dragon bone. A fan favorite of the channel is up next. It's Ian the Guard Dragon. Having range here is awesome because this guy loves to take to the air. With poison arrows, we can keep the damage ticking away, and lightning arrows do pretty nice damage as well. We even managed to pull off the mid-air kill for this unique and silly death animation. Gotta love it. We get the Age Feather from the Emerald Herald, not sure why she couldn't have just given this to us earlier if she's supposed to be helping us, but anyway. And of course Tiny Audia shows up once again. Before proceeding, I use a bunch of poppable souls to buy Cloanne's stock of petrified dragon bones while I remember, and then return to Dragon Shrine, where the Dragon Knights bow down to me when I defeat their champion. I wasn't quite ready to dive into the tedium of this boss yet, so for now, Sean Connery just gave me his dragon heart. We next head to the place unbeknownst, an area forgotten to time, much like that terrible movie I just mentioned, where we head into the giant memory. I hope these giants get ahead in life and then take on this boss, which should be called the Giant Board, because that would better represent how I feel while fighting him. Arrows, arrows, and more arrows, along with poison, soon ends this one. I slap some more points into various stats, and then head into the Throne of Want. My plan all along has been to rush Nashandra to get the bow you can get from her soul. It has faith scaling, and needs petrified dragon bones to upgrade, which explains the leveling choices and our focus on me grabbing those materials. I'll just do the Throne Duo and Nashi for now, and then come back for Audia another time after I beat Vendrick. Remember I said that'll be important later. So the Throne Duo. I went with the classic strategy of weakening both of them until they're quite low, and then killing off one and taking out the second quickly. The most difficult part of this fight is just finding a time to heal if you do take a hit, as they can rush you pretty quickly. But other than that, this was pretty straightforward, just whittling them down with arrows and poison. Defender goes down first, and then I turn the Watcher into a stop Watcher as they die shortly after. One down, one to go. As for Challenger Nashandi, well, range makes this fight even more trivial than usual, because using range often just causes her to spam the easily avoided beam attacks, and yeah, that's about it really. Just keep shooting and walking left and right for the most part, and you'll have a good time, I suppose. We sit in this chair to make a throne call before watching some unskippable end credits for 30 years, before finally heading to Ornifex to unburden ourselves of Nashandra's soul and get the Bow of Want. With all the bones we collected, I upgrade it to maximum and blast Faith up to 35. Let's now go clear up the stuff we missed. Starting with hides. I was wondering if it was possible to hit Ian from a distance. This appears to be too far, but what if we get a little bit closer? I took out the knights in this section and... hey, we can shoot him. He can fire back with some spicy meatballs, but this is still a pretty effective strat. I take out the knight at the top here as well, and prepare for the old dragon slayer. Compared to the real Ornstein, this guy doesn't resist lightning at all. He goes down in under a minute after we shoot him in the lungs repeatedly, damaging his respiratory system. Next up, it's the Ruined Sentinels. Just look at that damage. Soon the first sentinel meets its imminent demise. We say Alessia to the second sentinel, and then we defeat the third with a last volley of arrows, leaving us much richer in terms of souls. Not gonna lie, I was a little worried about the belfry gargoyles. Any fight with multiple enemies is normally a bad time for bow builds, or anything that relies on attacking one enemy at a time with lock-on. This was part of the reason I wanted to get a strong bow before doing this, so I could bring them all down quickly. I let many arrows fly belfry from my bow, and soon these guys fall as well. Executioner's Chariot is next on the hit list. I tried to take out the red phantom through the bars on this platform, but annoyingly couldn't quite hit him. Oh well, gotta do it the normal way. As for the chariot itself, I took out the necromancers as per usual, but I had a different plan to take down the horse. Instead of closing the gate, we actually use our bow to shoot the chariot as it passes. After it takes enough damage, the horse fails the jump over the gap, leaving it defenseless with no recourse, as one more shot causes it to plummet to its doom. We then head to Grave of Saints and eradicate these rodents, and do the same in the Doors of Pharos with this god-awful boss. At least we one-shot the minions quickly, helping make this encounter short. But one thing that certainly will not be short is the Ancient Dragon. Poison helps, but it's just the usual slog. As long as we toe the line with our strategy, there's no danger, and he dies after a few minutes. We take a quick trip back to the Black Gulch, where we kill the giants, speak with Grandalf, grab the dragon's talon from the well, and head to the first DLC, the Crown of the Sunken King. I had acquired quite a few souls throughout that boss rush, so I leveled up a whole bunch. I activated the second bonfire here, and sniped away at this extraordinarily annoying spellcaster. Having archery makes hitting the switches in this area quite easy. It's not like there's anything too useful to grab here, but it's always fun to catch these soldiers in the spike stair trap. Small pleasures. After activating the third bonfire, grabbing the Sanctum key, escaping with the Dragonstone, and placing it in the slot, we escape to safety. The Sanctum key lets us access the room where we can get the Lightning Clutch Ring, boosting our lightning damage at the cost of us taking more physical damage. I wonder if this will actually be worth it. Well, it's almost time for our first DLC boss, so I guess we'll find out. The Gank Squad. Everyone's favourite. Normally most people take out the Archer, but I find that when it comes to range builds, he actually dodges projectiles way more compared to the other two. So I took out Varg and Grave Robber first with a combined poison and lightning arrows, and now it was just me versus Michael Cera the Old Explorer. Without the constant assault of the other two, we were able to land some hits on him, even if he dodged like crazy at points, but a few more shots brings an end to this one. Probably one of the quicker gank fights I've ever done. So, it's time for one of the fights that worried me the most doing this run. I'm talking, of course, about Ilana Squalid Queen. It's the old situation of multi-enemy boss fights making for a bad time when really you can only aim at one enemy at once. Making the egregious mistake of focusing on one enemy for too long means death. I decided to swap out for more dark defense to see if that would help with the situation, and ended up looking extremely fashionable. Really accentuates my shoulders. In fairness, the first part of the fight before she summons is pretty easy. We can just walk left and right sniping her while dodging projectiles. But once she summons either Velstad or the skeletons, things get messy. Even finding time to heal is difficult without getting punished. I did opt to take down Velstad this time, but it was by no means a quick process. I've also really started to notice how slow the Bow of Want is here, and honestly it doesn't feel like we're getting that much damage. Velstad goes down, but we get all of about 10 seconds to enjoy it before the skeletons come out, but at least they're easier to bring down. It's impossible to get more than a small window of fighting Ilana solo, so needless to say, this fight was a drawn out affair, clearing 12 minutes of playtime. But finally, this annoying fight is over, but my mind is full of truly squalid visions of what this fight will be in the coming cycles. Comparatively, this slumbering dragon was pretty easy, even if I did get burnt to cinders by his flames a couple times. Being able to shoot him in midair is really useful to keep the pressure on, and most of his attacks are easily telegraphed with big enough windows for me to get shots in. I even managed to land the finishing blow in midair for his unique death animation, bringing this scintillating fight to a close. After Ilana, I decided being able to use healing more quickly would be useful, so I leveled up ADP some more. At this time, I opted to clear up the other two giant memories. Forlorn came to ruin my day, so I took him out, before proceeding to the final memory, which I nearly got kicked out of for taking too long trying to snipe these giants. Professor X then helped me to unlock the darkest corners of my mind, in which I killed my inner demons, lit up the area, killed more demons, and finally prepared to face Darklurker. Even a boss who is supposedly weak to lightning doesn't take that much damage from this bow. What the hell? I'm really left in the dark as to why this bow doesn't do more damage. In any case, this was not so bad. Even in the splitting phase, their movesets are more balanced than Ilana and her gank bros, so getting the shots in wasn't too tough, and a couple minutes after, he goes down. Now some of you might be wondering about the bow's special attack. Pressing L2 fires out a lightning bolt that doesn't use an arrow, but instead uses about a quarter of the durability of the weapon. So I tested this to see if it was worth it. Against this enemy here, the special attack did 451 damage, while a normal lightning arrow did 308. It's definitely quite a bit more, like 50%, but it does mean every 3 shots I need to use a repair powder, which is not ideal in most boss fights. Anyway, I decided to head to Ilium Lois next. There's actually a useful item for our build here. We make our way through, killing and sniping as we go, until we grab the Eye of the Priestess and try to feed our avarice with the souls we'll get from killing this cat. Our damage here was again pretty mediocre. I think we were only just getting yellow in the health bar. Remember, this is a max upgraded boss weapon infused with its innate element using the arrow type that ties in with said element. You can poison Ava, but she's really resistant, so it takes a lot of arrows and doesn't even last that long. Thankfully, we can avoid most of the attacks easily, landing some arrows, and soon after this kitty goes for a permanent catnap. Yeah, you know what we're doing here. We grab the garrison ward key for a little later, but before we go to that hell, we take out Sonic's cousins, Maldron introduces us to a difficulty spike, we free a knight before things snowball out of control, and then enter this secret room for this treasure. I said we grab this treasure, Durgo's hat, which boosts the range of arrows. Especially helpful for casting away this witch, who is being a bit of a prima donna. I was going to take out this ice golem, but it turns out he can heal. Multiple times. After he healed for like the 4th time, I decided to sack him off and just free the nearby knight. We free up the last knight, and then finally enter the outskirts to get this hell out of the way. As usual, the reindeer gave me a pained rear courtesy of their charged attacks. Finally, we make it to the twin kitty cats. Thankfully, they have a lot less health than Ava did, but of course there's 2 of them. I actually had a crazy lucky run of finishing off Lud. I got him poisoned at about half health, and then managed to land a lot of arrows in him without getting attacked by Zalin, even though it had joined the fight. This was really Valud-dating, and soon after, Lud is down, leaving only Zalin. This was mostly fine, I just avoided it until the buff wore off. I did get munched due to a misjudgment at one point, but we recover and shortly after we send Zalin off to the pet cemetery. So that just leaves Ivory King for this DLC. Again, both the knights and Ivory King are supposed to be weak to lightning, but the damage just really doesn't seem like it. After being taken out by the king after the usual long fight, I very much wanted to make some changes to my setup. Firstly, I just wasn't convinced that the Lightning Clutch Ring's damage buff was worth lowering my defenses for, so I swapped it out for the Magic Quartz Ring +2 to help with the beam sword attacks. I also realized I still had the Hawk Ring on, which wasn't really all that useful here, so put on the old Leo Ring. This did help, a little anyway, but I really had begun to doubt my bow and I wanted to try an alternative. Back in Drangleic Castle, I grabbed the Hunter's Blackbow, the fastest firing bow in the game apparently. I felt the speed of the shots was really letting me down here, so with my fully upgraded Hunter's Blackbow and a load of iron arrows, I was ready to go. For comparison, the lightning arrows were doing about 148 to the knights, while the iron arrows on the Hunter's bow were getting between 150 and 170, depending on whether it was a counter shot or not. On top of that, the bow fires faster and uses less stamina, so no question this was the right choice. Probably would have helped me with Alana as well, but never mind. For Ivory King, the damage was less, about 14 points less, but because I could fire faster, there were many more opportunities to hit him, and I was able to avoid damage much more easily. I literally did this on the first try after switching to this bow. Right at the end, as he powered up again, I was able to get 4 shots in, finishing him off, allowing us to burn the page on this very long fight. The crazy thing? I did that without respecking yet. I opted to now, getting rid of all the points in Faith to pump up Vigor, Endurance, Strength, and Dexterity. I really want to forget about Nishandra's bow. Well, final DLC time, the Old Iron King DLC. Having the bow really helps to snipe some of these tough enemies, which allows us to quietly sneak through this room. I was hoping we could shoot through the bars here, but yeah, no dice. We can just about shoot through this hole in the ground thankfully, and that lets us poison the enemies. We get the foyer bonfire, get through this horrible section with some more poison cheese, grab the scorching scepter, and plunge it into this round orifice. Sniping again helps us to clear these rooms before we drop down into them, which finally allows us to take on Fume Knight. So, I actually did this hitless. Fume Knight is really trivialized by ranged attacks, more so than any other DLC boss. Just keep moving backwards and dodging, firing when he ends his combo. This felt pretty liberating after all that nonsense with the Ivory King and Alana. Our knight friend here wasn't happy though, he was positively fuming by the end of this. We grab the crown of the Old Iron King, and then head down to Iron Passage. Time for Blue Smelter Demon. The strategy is pretty similar to the normal one honestly. Poison works a treat still, but the fight just takes longer due to his high health. Easy fight, but trust me when I say this is going to leave us feeling blue later. Speaking of hell, let's enter this memory and take on the final DLC boss of this cycle, that being Alon Malkovich. With the high speed of this bow, getting shots in really wasn't too bad here. Again, this fight I'm sure is going to suck in the coming cycles, but here we have enough time to fire shots and then dodge right afterwards. I probably could have done this one hitless as well, but I really didn't want to delay the next cycle anymore, given how long this was already going to take. DLC is complete. Last couple of bosses. I was curious to see what happens if I aggro Vendrick from outside the boss room, and yeah, nothing. The fog gate just comes up. We enter and kill him with no issues because obviously it's Vendrick. And of course we went back to kill Audia as our last boss, okay, so it turns out I didn't know that if you kill Nishandra before Vendrick, Audia never appears as a boss. So, yeah. To be fair, it's Audia. I mean, do you really think that would have been difficult? I don't care about leafing that tree unbeaten here. We head quickly to Macross to grab the light duff bow to start off the next cycle. I'm allowing myself to keep the rings and armor this time, as it's going to be pretty much the same setup for every cycle anyway, so just to avoid wasting time. Just to mention, if you're enjoying the run, why not consider subscribing? Many watching aren't subscribed, and doing so means you get notified of new content and also help to support the channel. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all. Journey 2 begins. We beeline past all the new nonsense, skip the cutscene, and engage in our first crossbow battle, which doesn't go too well, honestly. We make Majula the most lit place to be, go on an unrelenting shopping spree, and get the light crossbow upgraded to +3. I actually nearly messed up the Dragon Rider cheese, but he was so desperate to go swimming that he still went down anyway. Now let's talk about crossbows. Just like Dark Souls 1, they have no scaling, fire slowly, and require some reload time after every shot, but unlike Dark Souls 1, you can actually aim with crosshairs. That always seemed like a mega oversight to me. Let's see how it does against the first actual boss, the Flexi Senile. This time round, he's flanked by two nimble shadows who unfortunately take several hits to bring down, meaning there's no way to kill them before the water rises to a level that impedes our movement. Thankfully, it's still not that much of an issue as we can just about get away from the sentry's attacks in time. Took quite a few shots due to our low damage and the new game plus health this boss is now blessed with, but eventually we bring down this sentry mental favourite. We make it to the Lost Bastille, grab this large Titanite lying up in this tower, and grab the antiquated key. We then snipe this cross player from a good distance away, and then blow up this wall with our special firebomb shaped crossbow, so we can grab all the useful upgrade materials in the chests around Macduff, and upgrade our crossbow to +6. So let's get some more bosses bowed, like the last giant for example. Our damage is average, but this boss is pretty easy and doesn't really cause any lasting issues, even if he is heavily armed. From heavily armed to heavily armored, the pursuer was about as tedious as you might expect. Okay, to be fair, the damage we get is way better than I was seeing at the start of the bow run. I did try to use the ballista, which is technically a giant crossbow, but the pursuer went kinda ballistic and destroyed it. Oh well. A few more minutes of suing the pursuiter, and down he goes. With this route opened, we gave the dull duff to McEmber and used the large Titanite he sold to get ourselves another light crossbow. That's right, let's test out power stancing. Or at least I thought we might, but I'm really not convinced the damage difference is that huge. Plus the reload time following a shot seems to be even larger than before. Plus the stamina drain is quite intense, leaving you rather vulnerable. But one other thing we can do is give our light crossbow the infusion of Raw, aka the Gordon Ramsay infusion. With this, it does about 40 points less damage than power stancing, but uses way less stamina and means I'm not as vulnerable. I think I might stick to this for now. Let's continue our sentinel through the boss ranks by trying to ruin these sisters. This was the first of what would be many pretty long fights across this cycle, taking almost 10 minutes from start to finish. It's not even necessarily that it's hard, it's just the damage isn't great and we gotta wait for the opportunities where we don't get punished when fighting the duo. Many shots later, this fight mercifully ends. I was feeling like I really needed more damage, so I quickly missioned back to the Forest of Fallen Giants to grab a Titanite slab and 2 Titanite chunks from this chest. I then helped a woman who was petrified with fear, grabbed another chunk from this chest, and then take on the leader of the local Scorporation. I could have just done that cheese where I get her stuck again, but decided just to do it the old-fashioned way. This time at least. Ranged weapons are tailor-made for this fight it seems. I made sure to take out the Lion Warrior for the Fang Key, help this woman with her escrow agreement, and then said an early heya to Freya as she came up to greet me this time. Shooting the head was way easier this time. Mostly. After another round of shots, she scuttles away. Also, these villagers drop chunks. I did not know that, but it's pretty handy. Now, for the congregation. I was pretty worried here that I wouldn't be able to kill the healers quickly enough with their higher health pools before they healed. I don't know if I got lucky, but they just didn't actually heal at all, so they died, and then their leader felt several gusts of wind as crossbow bolts flew into his face. I got some more chunks in Brightstone, took down Guthrie in a crossbow strafe battle who once again did not drop an Avalyn, and then spoke to Eileen the Crow to buy a heavy crossbow, which I infused to Raw and upgraded to +10. Well, now's as good a time as any for another multi-enemy boss fight. Damage is barely better than we would have got with the light crossbow, honestly. We pretty soon found we had 3 gargoyles on our case. Despite how awful this might look initially, a lot of the time the gargoyles stay passive and out of the way, so there wasn't too much strategy apart from just running and firing. At least we can get off this roof. It's bell freezing up here. We grab the Bastille key and head to the Lost Sinner boss fight, another of only 2 boss fights in New Game Plus that adds additional mobs for some reason. At least it breaks the inertia of most New Game Plus bosses, but still pretty random that it's only Flexile Sentry and this. Anyway, about halfway into these, Pyro Bros joined to try and ruin our day. I'm not sure if this was the best strategy or not, but I opted to just try and ignore them and focus on the Sinner. Although I took a few hits, I did manage to pull this off, but getting out the door after was a struggle, as they were pretty fired up after I took out their friend. Let's get a few more bosses taken down rapid fire style. Ian kept seeing crossbow bolts. We leave the old Dragon Slayer dragon laying on the ground. We make Ratatouille with the Royal Vanguard. I arrive at Ordeal's beginning, quickly went to buy fire bolts, which sadly still didn't kill the rats in one shot. I hate this fight. Now saying that, if you land a hit when they're close and you hit their head, it can one-shot them. But once you get toxicked, it's game over. On the next attempt, I was luckily able to kill them all quickly, after which the actual boss was very easy and he died, putting an end to this raternity. I struggled to keep my mind out of the gutter after those encounters, so it made sense to take my body there as well. We take out the giants below to get the Forgotten Key, achieve victory over this woodland child, and go initiate this encounter with Dumbledark. Now you might think the Rotten would be resistant to fire, given that this room is literally filled with fire, which he takes no damage from if he moves over it, but yeah, no, he's definitely not. That's actually the best damage against the boss I've seen so far. Of course, I decided that because I was able to free aim, it made absolute sense to try and shoot off his arms again. It was slower going shooting his arms off this time, but we still did manage to get both off, even though the machete arm regrew just as the other one retached. Shortly after, his retenue was cut short, and another Great Soul is down. Back in Medulla, I leveled up intelligence? Okay, trust me, again, there's a reason. We proceed to Huntsman's Copse, where we pooper-shooter this Moonlight Butterfly, precision ping this Red Phantom, and take on the Executioner's Chariot. Our strategy was similar to last time, but it took a lot longer to take down the Necromancer, and then in turn the Chariot as well. I actually thought by hanging around near the beginning I'd be able to shoot the Chariot without having to go past the second Necromancer, but sadly no. You can only see its shadow, so we have to run round the other way, which is pretty annoying, but it only takes one shot to bring this game of course to a close, and reward us with a Chloranthy Ring +2 this time. We move through the Copse and shoot Merciless Boenna with our crossrow, and then it's time for the Skeleton Lords. I've been kinda relying on fire bolts for a bit, but the water in this arena unfortunately does reduce their damage a little. But you know, it's Skeleton Lords, so I just shot them a bunch with my skull and crossbones, and eventually they died after 8 minutes, where my mind drifted off to a higher plane of consciousness. New Game Plus Harvest Valley has some goodies for us, including 3 Titanite chunks and another Raw Stone. We give these pyromancers their just deserts, and then we take on the Covetous Demon. I actually forgot on the last cycle about the hanging jars that you can shoot to drop hollows into the arena that Covetous Demon will then eat, because this boss really needed a mechanic to distract him and give you openings to attack. Anyway, we down him easy. I've done this so often you might as well call me a Coveteran. The Baneful Queen also was not too much of a challenge here, and we quickly dismither her. We quickly progress into the joy that is Iron Keep. I actually somehow got to the Fog Gate by running through all the enemies, which was some kind of miracle honestly. Smelty took a bit longer than last time thanks to the lack of poison. Fire bolts were obviously not a good shout, so we used Iron bolts. Dodging through the attacks and getting behind him is a good opportunity to get shots in, and with enough of these, we wish him a heart smelt goodbye. New Game Plus brings this Red Phantom Turtle guy before the bonfire, but luckily he's pretty dumb, and we use this fire to cook him inside his shell. Of course, old Iron King was easy as hell, just dodge his attacks and god damn it. As much as I'd love her to talk about what happened, let's just say bolts were fired and the old Iron King retired, leaving only one Great Soul remaining, which is Freya. But guess what? Because we can one-hand the crossbow, we can use the torch again. This made the whole fight pretty trivial as usual. The crossbow damage is pretty weak, but this spider is kinda frail, so it only took a few minutes to end this one. Next, Audi appears to remind me of my error in the last cycle. We gun down some Mastodon Knights en route to the castle. We snipe one Knight to activate the one Golem before MC Hammer tells us we can't touch this, but luckily we were too legit to quit, and we give him some pumps and a bump with our crossbow bolts. I lure the second Knight over to activate Golem number 2, and this ghost is able to Celiger us some magic and lightning bolts. Nice. I briefly toyed with the idea of pursuing the Ring of Blades +2, but yeah, I'm not doing that. I opened up the way to the secret bonfire beneath Drangleic Castle, and we're going to attempt the Dark Chasms right now. The one underneath the castle didn't even require much effort because the enemies here like having a whole lot of fun. But I actually ran into difficulties in the Black Gulch Chasm. This tree ghost thing actually kept healing, and I couldn't seem to kill it until it just gave up one time. Easily the most annoying enemies in the chasms this time round. After all that, we finally get to Darklurker. I did some testing with different bolts here, magic, fire and lightning. Lightning seems to be the most consistent, so I stuck with that. The second phase got quite intense, and my shots were pretty infrequent, dragging the fight out a little. Also, the damage they do now is huge. It was close at points, but thankfully I was able to locate the right opportunities to attack and pull off the win. With that nonsense taken care of, we can return to Drangleic, grabbing the frozen flower, clearing out the surplus of invaders, and trying to avoid this fight from dragging out for too long. Spoiler, it didn't, we ride onwards. I actually leveled up for the first time in ages, grabbing some more endurance, and then cheesed up this red phantom who was scared of lifts. We grabbed the key to the King's Passage, and successfully entered the Looking Glass Knight's fog gate with no issues. Yep, no issues. This time, I did opt to kill the summons just to make my life a bit easier. I used magic bolts this time as the knight resists lightning. Damage was not bad, and there were several opportunities to land the hits where needed, but I did get punished at times where I underestimated how quick he can close the distance. But a few more shots and this knight breathes his last breath. Shrine of Amana is honestly so much better with any archery build. Seriously, get a vantage point, slap on the hawk ring, and go to town. The last bit is still kind of scary with all these guys running at you, but you can confuse the hell out of them by closing this door and then this door in this building, allowing you to then reopen the first door and make a leisurely run for the fog gate and the bonfire. The Kindalur Bueno can be easily killed by holding your shot until he fires magic, and then Kermit sang me a song about how it wasn't easy being green, but I showed him that being green was actually a lot easier than being dead. From Attain, we agdained some dark bolts, and then I made the egregious error of lighting this torch down here, which I've never actually done before. It summons a whole lot of red phantoms, it seems, so yeah, probably don't do this. I did discover a nice shortcut to the bonfire though. But most importantly, in this area, behind an illusory wall, we find the Avalyn, the classic crossbow in these games that fires 3 bolts. Shame we couldn't get the Avalyn from the previous cycle so that we could now dual wield them, but oh well. Except I did grab it and they're both maxed. We power stancing, baby. I was eager to test them out, so I quickly ran through and activated the shortcut with 0 issues. We then take on Havelstad the Rock. Okay, the damage kinda slaps here. This reload doesn't seem too bad with them, and the stamina use while high isn't crazy. I think we stick with this for the rest of the run. A few more volleys of bolts and Velstad is Egistery. After smelling Vendrick's old clothes, we take him on now as we've already got the Giant Souls from the last cycle, but unfortunately Vendrick completes the Dark Souls 2 one-shot challenge. On me. Despite that minor hiccup, we come back and quickly complete our extra Vendricular activities. I remembered to kill him before Nashandra this time. I smack some points into endurance, and then infuse both Avalyns with Raw, before we enter the Sunken King DLC. We unlock the hidden bonfire here, and right next to it we grab the Sanctum Crossbow. I suppose I need to find a use for it somewhere, but I need both intelligence and faith at 10 to be able to use it. While here, I grab the Eternal Sanctum Key and the Dragonstone, and get all the useful stuff here. I was going to kill Jester Thomas, but too much dodging, and we've got a horrible boss fight to do. Yep, it's time for Alana once again. Joy! Oh look, her damage has leveled up quite a bit. And Velstad's too. Yeah, this fight was not fun. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be. To be fair, our damage is actually better than I was expecting, especially with magic bolts. On the winning attempt, the first 2 times she summoned the skeletons, which thankfully we can take out with 2 rounds of Avalyn, and it was only when she hit half health that she brought out Velstad. I didn't think there was any way I'd be able to take him out quick, so I just focused fire on Alana. The ideal situation is Alana doing the AoE while Velstad does an attack, but sadly she does this quite rarely. Close to the end, she brought out the skeletons. I kept my cool and focused on her still, but I nearly lost it with the final hit just trying to lock onto her. Bolts fired all over, but thankfully some did hit her and ended the fight. That was complete Elanarchy. Entering the very Sinteria area of the DLC, we actually get a nice breather facing Sin the Dragon. I never thought I'd consider Sin a nice break, but this run is doing strange things. A few more shots end up finishing this fight. We've got one more boss in the area, but first Forlorn takes his revenge. What is that damage? The gank squad was about as exciting as you might imagine. The only thing I was afflicted by here was boredom. One day, I will figure out a run that makes this boss interesting to fight. One day. I then grab the Iron Keep from Iron Key and level up intelligence to 10 before heading down to Newt Scamander Pit to grab the heavy Iron Key. Yeah, these guys didn't really lick that joke. We enter Broom Tower, and once again sniping is the name of the game. I'm going to do this every time I come to this area from now on, especially with this god-awful room. The Barrel Boys blew up this big blooming brute before I went to take on the Blue Smelter Demon. Now he is supposedly weak to dark, but I'm not seeing that much damage from the dark bolts. I could try the Sanctum Crossbow, but that damage seems even worse. Well actually, there is another feature this crossbow has. Much like the Bow of Want, it can fire a dark projectile at the cost of durability, doing a nice little chunk of damage. Unfortunately, it does cost a lot of durability to use, and I could have gone and got the Bracing Knuckle Ring, but I was too lazy. So I just equipped the ton of repair powder I randomly brought earlier and went to work. It was really important to remember to use the powder every 3 shots, or the crossbow breaks, ending the attempt. Was this better in the end than using the Avalons? Honestly, I have no idea. This was a 10-minute fight, but worth it to give this niche crossbow some use, I guess. His damage is absolutely monstrous once his sword is buffed, taking out 70% of my health with each hit. The Elizabeth mushrooms I brought from Agdane were an absolute lifesaver. Finally, after a lot of black fiery meatballs, we teach this demon he who smelt it dealt it, and forget about this until the horror that is the fight in the next cycle. But that's a problem for future JK. Right now, we just make our way down and prepare to fumigate this room of a night infestation. Unlike the last encounter with him, this was not hitless. Seems like he was pretty angry about all that disrespect from last time. He literally resists everything, so there's no way to get any kind of meaningful damage going here. I never saw anything close to yellow damage during this, and we can add this to the long boss fight folder. Anytime I took a single hit, I was consumed by fear that I'd die and have to start this all over, but thankfully I held on just about until the end and brought this one to a close. For a brief break, I went to Ornifex and traded the Old King soul I got from killing New Game Plus Iron King for the Dragon Slayer Greatbow. Crazy that you can only get this in New Game Plus or with a bonfire aesthetic. We get some more points into strength and dex to help when we get to that cycle, and then head to Ian the Guard Dragon. If you're wondering why we're not doing Cerulon now, remember, we don't have the Ashen Mist Heart yet, so we need to get to Ancient Dragon and get that before we can enter the memory. I saw the yellow damage here and nearly shed a tear. Feels like it's been years since I've seen that. Thank you, Ian. You always know how to cheer me up. After some fun ziplining, Ancient Dragon brings me right back down to earth. He really pushed me over the edge. I'm genuinely considering not doing this boss on future runs. Like, I'm not joking. Does anyone actually care about seeing me fight this dragon with the ancient art of Taekwondo? Anyway, he's dead. Our levels get pumped a bit more, and we head into the memory of Jay. Giant Lord definitely didn't nearly kill me at the beginning of the fight. Nope, that was a figment of your imagination. Stop laughing. Stop writing that comment. I see you doing that. Stupid Giant Lord. Okay, now we can go back to Cerulon. So have a look at this. That death was after 11 minutes of fighting him. Alon is probably one of, if not the hardest boss to fight when you have a slow attack like using dual crossbows, for example. He's able to counter very quickly, and there's no distance that you're safe from him. Plus, the 2 potential speeds of his charges can be off-putting even if there are subtle tells. I played this really safe, pretty much only waiting until I had managed to dodge behind him before firing, as his slow turn is really the only safe time, and even then sometimes it's not guaranteed you won't get punished. Easily the sweatiest fight of the run so far, the winning attempt clocked in at 13 minutes. The best advice is never ever fire if he's facing you. There were many tense moments, even right up till the end, but we pull out a narrow win. Luckily, I've got a nasty strat for the Greatbow run. Right, final DLC, let's get it. We grab the Priestess Eye, and then shoot Ava till they die. The damage is quite average. Okay, that's probably a bit generous. Compared to Alon, this was very smooth, and after enough shots, we add Ava to the catalogue of defeated bosses. We do all the usual stuff like getting the Garrison Ward Key, free the Knights, shoot at Castaway Witch Donna Paulson, and once again leave this golem because, yeah, healing, no thanks. While I remembered, I stocked up on Iron Great Arrows from Macduff, and prepared myself for the Ivory King fight. Why can I never do this fight without choking when he's on low health? Seriously, what's wrong with me? Taking out the Knights this time round wasn't too bad. Damage again is not great, but really all I need to do is draw the aggro of the Knights while the boys take him out. One of them actually made it to the main event with me, but the king asked him for his ID ivorification, and sadly he left it at home. Similar to Alon, finding an attack window when you won't get punished with the king is tough. The best time is dodging under his jump attacks and then punishing him when his back is turned. Every mistimed dodge is pure terror in this one, just because of how long it will take to get back to this point if I die. Thankfully though, we bring an end to this with a few more well-placed shots. That was quite an ordeal. Hopefully we end up somewhere nicer next. Oh, god damn it. So, interesting thing I found out here, the tigers do indeed take more damage with headshots. Also, weirdly, even though the lock-on point is the body, when you fire the bolts, they go to the head, which is pretty handy but confusing from a UI perspective. In any case, we actually got good damage when hitting the heads. We can thankfully finish off Lud quite quickly. Once it's one-on-one, it's the usual strat of just avoiding Zalim while it's buffed, as it can do catastrophic damage, and then blast him with bolts until victory is claimed, and all the DLC has now been crossbowed. So that just leaves the final boss Gauntlet to do. The damage we actually do to Throne Watcher and Defender compared to the DLC bosses is night and day. So much yellow. Especially to the white armored one, just watch that health deplete. I got them both to very low health and then finished them off with a barrage of bolts they couldn't defend against. The queen comes now, making a Nashandramatic entrance followed by an easy fight as she just spams easy to avoid lasers and we shoot her repeatedly until she dies. GG too easy. We now get to fight Aldir for the first time in this run due to my error before, I mean, it's most Aldir fights, guys. Just wait for him to reappear, shoot, rinse, repeat. Not much else I would say except that I've got something really special for this fight at the end of the next cycle. Oh, also, I delivered the finishing blow while he still had the fire shield up, so I guess that's something cool, yeah. This time, we walk solemnly away from the throne room for our ending and do one final load of leveling before the Greatbow cycle. So I chose to start with the Dragonslayer Greatbow, as there's 3 other Greatbows, but 2 require some very painful farming for drops, which I just don't want to do, and the 3rd is hidden in Ilium Lois, so makes sense to get that later. Remember those ones I decided not to farm? It will be important later. Let's test it on some actual moving targets in the final cycle. Okay, wow, yeah, really slow. So listen up, I'm going to make this interesting. So while I do have the petrified dragon bones to max upgrade this baby right now, I'm only going to allow myself to level up 1 time for each great soul defeated. I'll start this bow at +1 and then upgrade it appropriately when I defeat one of Freya, Lost Sinner, the Rotten and Old Iron King. Get it? Got it? Good. I buy everything from Melentia, use the cat ring to drop down the well, and enter the Black Gulch and enter the Rotten's boss room. I hate these guys. So, it has to be said, damage with the Greatbow obviously is the highest per shot of any of the weapons. I of course was keen to continue my tradition of shooting off the Rotten's arms here, which I did manage to do. It's alarming how easy this is, even with the Greatbow. One thing I really need to be aware of though is how much stamina each shot uses. We're talking like 70% of my stamina bar, so if I'm not nearly full, I won't be able to dodge or move after. That's fine for an easy slow boss like the Rotten, but some bosses coming up scare me. Anyway, first Great Soul claimed. So let's get our first upgrade, hopefully for significant damage. Let's test it out on the last giant. Damage does look pretty good per shot, but yeah, obviously those new game ++ health bars are really something. I spent probably way too long trying to shoot a great arrow into his whole face for basically like no reason, before killing the last giant for the last time. The Pursuer, being a big armoured lad, took less damage from each shot, and yeah, even this fight was 8 minutes long, and it's the second boss. I'm starting to think this run might have been a mistake. The reasonably high damage just isn't compensating for how infrequently I can attack. Is my pursuit of completing this challenge across the trilogy going to be my downfall? This fight ends, but the question is, what have I begun here? We grab the dull Andre from this chest, a shameless Dark Souls 1 reference, and then snipe this guy, which is at least something positive. I get the Macduff bonfire unlocked as well, just so we have access to more arrows if we need them. But we're going to hides first, so my logic here was if I can shoot this guy, I should be able to shoot Ian from here. Right? Nope, still too far. That's disappointing. I did manage to find this safe spot to shoot him though. Mid-air death for the win. After pulling the old Dragon Slayer lever here, I decided it was time for a different Dragon Rider cheese this time. Yep, shooting him from outside the arena. Always a wild ride in these archery runs. You can't kill him this way, it brings him to 1 HP, but still, you love to see it. Old Dragon Slayer had some lofty aspirations, but we soon brought him down to earth with our Dragon Slayer Greatbow. I realized I needed more damage, so I ran to Shaded Woods and spoke to the head of Vengal, who kindly sells us destructive great arrows. These arrows do a whole 25% more damage than the normal ones, so we should be seeing some better numbers here. I next took the route to No Man's Wharf, and this was where the troubles got more, troubling. Flexile Sentry was actually a problem. I can't believe I'm saying that. Trying to actually land a shot on the little guys with the ever-rising water is absolute hell. I managed to figure out where the first one enters the room and land a shot right at the start. It actually takes 2 shots to bring them down as well, so 4 total were needed to clear them from the room. Finding time to actually land the shots felt RNG, especially with 2 of them on the go. Once I killed one though, this was a bit easier. With the second dead, who for some reason still just stands there after death, the sentry was easy enough to flex on with my Greatbow, and goes down after another 5 minutes of running away and shooting. We can now enter the Lost Bastille and head to the Ruined Sentinels. Taking out Yahim was totally fine as you might imagine, but when Alessia and Ricci fought together, I felt like I was constantly out of stamina. It was another 12-minute endurance test. Is this shaping up to be the worst Greatbow run of the Dark Souls trilogy for me? Well, only one way to find out. A few more arrows and Alessia goes down, and then Reacher shortly after. Well, that was a real fall from grace. I was pretty worried about this next fight, so I procrastinated for a while sniping these mummies. One of them even sniped himself for me. Okay, let's do this. Obviously, there's a lot of issues here. The Lost Sinner can counterattack quite quickly, but it's these damn pyromancers that cause me the most worry. I think that I need to kill them this time because I need the time and space to shoot the Sinner, which I can't have with all 3 of them in play. But they can actually dodge my shots. The one good thing is that it only takes 2 shots to kill them, but it's so hard to do without also taking damage. Through some miracle, I was able to take them down and survive. With them down, the Sinner was nowhere near as difficult, and after a few more shots, we incinerate this boss with our large burning arrows. With another great one downed, we upgrade the bow to +3. So onto a different route as we face Najka, who we mainly just cheese by locking her into place. I guess we could call this Sting Cheese. In Brightstone, we shoot this guy so hard it mangles his body into the ground, shoot Freya in the face, blast all congregation with Great Magusto, and then take on our giant spider Greatsoul, who hits like a freight train. Ouch. I took out the spiders here as I can't use the torch again, but this was a welcome break compared to some of the other fights we've encountered so far. With the minions out, it's an easy walk around and fire. Gotta enjoy these moments of peace, you know? We then shoot this Seldorable guy in the back of the head, level up the Greatbow to +4, and we're now ready to blast our way into Huntsman's Copse. Moena here gets rowed down by a huge arrow, and it's time for the Skeleton Lords. Again, this sounds like it's going to be awful, but outside of the wheel skeletons, which are only a minor annoyance, all the enemies that appear in this are too slow to be that much of a danger. Can you imagine if this fight had the Dark Souls 1 wheel skeletons and those rolling skeletons from Demon Souls? Actually, wait, no, forget I said that. Do not give Miyazaki idea. Anyway, after 12 minutes of shooting skeletons and running, this fight is done. Alright, let's clear up some of these easy ones rapid fire. We Kavito this demon's existence, snipe Mannequin for the win, tell the Baneful Queen that we're not into the Mythenary position, knock this knight on his back with a bow's line, and... okay, I said easy, but Smelter Demon was actually kinda tough. Finding an opening where we can fire without being punished is pretty difficult. In fact, we got through this by tanking quite a few attacks and healing almost constantly. The only time that was 100% safe to attack was when he did the jump, but honestly he didn't do it as often as I would have liked. This wasn't great, but we had to work with the hand we were smelt. His blue twin gives much more cause for concern though. Also, after killing him I foolishly went AFK and got killed by the knights who I'd run past before. Weirdly, when I got back to the door, the fog gate was back, but I didn't actually have to kill the Smelter Demon again, thankfully. What the hell was that about? Anyway, we need to get that final upgrade. With a combination of headshots and helpful guillotines, we make it to the old Iron King, our last great soul on the last cycle. We quickly iron him out with no issues to speak of, and we get to see medium-sized Audia. I never actually had him appear in this room before. Neat. Our bow is max upgraded, time for clear up. So we quickly take out these bell freeloaders living on this roof, give these red phantoms the career push they needed, show no remorse to this horse as we fire arrows with great force, take an authoritative approach to these little buggers before taking out Vomit Sif. Seriously, good riddance to this fight. Outside Drangleic Castle, I accidentally aggroed everyone, but landed a somehow lucky shot to get the door open. We grabbed the frozen flower and headed into this boss fight where my Dragon Rider Slayer Greatbow made quick work of Double Dragon 2. We take out this mannequin to activate the golem, and then take on Looking Glass Knight. Although there were some tough moments in this fight where we did take some hits, once the summon goes down, we shot the knight repeatedly in the stomach to give him a bad case of glasteritis, and he dies shortly after. For Shrine of Amana, the huge range of the Greatbow was excellent for bringing down the Archdrakes before they could even get to me. This one got close to me, but he got a little ahead of himself. Also, I got the best Kinder Joy kill of the run, as my great arrow sends him to a watery grave. We then play Frogger with the boss of this area. Unfortunately for them, my great arrows hit them like a truck and leave them squished in the middle of the road. Okay, how about an actual challenging boss now? Velstad did cause me some issues for sure. In New Game Plus Plus, his damage is huge, and I need to avoid firing the bow when a shot will completely drain my stamina, otherwise I'm going to take a hard hit. In Phase 2, the damage is even higher, and our arrows do a lot less also. The best time to attack is right after dodging through his combo, but I must make sure I have full stamina so I can dodge the follow-up. After a good 8 minutes, 6 of which were just Phase 2, we can update his Vel status to dead. I follow this by circling around Vendrick for a good 10 minutes, where somehow I get caught by this attack again. Why does this happen to me every single time? Those swings should not be so Ventricky to avoid. Anyway, I still got him first try. Think Throne Watcher and Defender would be awful? Well, you'd be right. I'm not ashamed to say I actually used a bright bug here. I also put on the Slumbering Dragon Shield for more stamina recovery. At this point, the fatigue was starting to kick in a little, and the number of tough bosses I had remaining was quite intimidating. I don't really know if the bright bug helped all that much, honestly. Because these bosses hit with multi-hit combos, I often fire once and only have enough stamina to dodge the first hit, but not the second. Finding any time to shoot them safely felt near impossible, and I felt like I traded with every single shot. I also had to alternate shots between the two because I needed both to be very low on health, as finishing one off quickly was just not possible. I took out the defender with the Watcher 2 hits from death and then sent them off to Throne Home shortly after. With that fiasco out of the way, we head to Aldia's Keep, where we can speak to Navlan. He actually sells us some stuff we need, but only once we complete his quest. We need to bring him certain items, such as the sunset staff we get from killing Felkin. Hey, get hit already. Okay, there we go. What? Level up Faith and Int? Nah. We finally show Navlan everything, and now we can buy lightning and fire great arrows. I don't know how useful these will be, but still worth having. He and the guard dragon caused me some pain this time, not gonna lie. What is this fire hitbox? I can't even really say why I found this difficult, I just kept getting caught by his fire attacks. He goes down, but damn Ian, why you gotta go so hard? I'm struggling here, man. But you all know there's more hardship ahead. We get the Mist Heart from the Ancient Dragon, who shows us his incredible stomp hitboxes. This was probably the only boss where I didn't get yellow in the health bar from our shots, just a testament to the crazy health this guy has. Once again, I felt ancient by the time this fight was over. Time for some clear up. First, we take on this group of rats guarding a van. Shooting them with fire arrows is fun. I just wish it was a bit more of an explosion so it hit multiple rats, but I'll take what I can get at this point. For the Giant Lord, I felt like this was the right time for a giant cheese. Once all the enemies are dead, you can run back to this point and just comfortably shoot the Giant Lord right in the face. He can't attack you at all, and it's pretty relaxing. 10 out of 10, would recommend. Well, the DLC Onslaught is coming. I thought it might be worth using a lightning infusion for the Greatbow to see if we could get some good damage. I tested it out on the Blue Smelter Demon and yeah, it's a little underwhelming to be honest. Actually, the destructive great arrows still did more damage. Yeah, let's get rid of that infusion. What a waste. This was one of the worst fights of the run. See that death? That was 20 minutes into the fight, and that wasn't the only time it happened. I wanted to cry at this point. After that much time, my concentration just started to wane. I'd get flustered and make silly mistakes. Also, there were occasional questionable hitboxes which were, yeah. So why was this so difficult? Well, the problem is the smelter can respond a bit faster than the other one, and with the slow firing speed, the only attack I found where I can punish is the jump attack, which he chose not to do that much. With his sword buffed, every attack is a 2-shot, clearing off over 70% of my health. Anytime I took a single hit, my heart started racing, and it was a frantic period of trying to heal up and not die. The winning attempt took 25 minutes. I spent a total of 4 hours on this boss, but it only made up about 8 or 9 attempts because of painfully dying right at the end. But finally, I managed to land the finishing blow and end this one before my brain smelted into mush from the agony of it all. I should have really taken a break here, but I went straight into Fume Night, which was, yeah, it was a bad idea. Okay, to be fair, there were more windows than Blue Smelter, but I was really running on fumes at this point. Many of his combos you can walk backwards just out of reach to get a shot off. It wasn't just a nice relaxing 15 minutes. Yeah, that's a normal length for a boss fight, definitely. Despite a couple of close calls, we persevered and this fight ends eventually. So Cerulon is next. Remember I said I had a nasty strategy for this? Well, it's definitely needed because, although you can hit him sometimes without getting punished, I'm 100% giving myself a tasty cheese break here. To be fair, I wanted to show off this cheese somewhere in the run anyway, and now seemed as good a time as any. By getting him stuck in this corner and then running behind this pillar, he loses track of you and you can shoot his arm. If we use a normal bow and just stayed still, he never moves, but because the Greatbow shots pushes back, it re-aggroes him after a couple shots, but it's kinda easy to reset. Repeat this for about 10 minutes, and this Alon Ranger bites the dust shortly after. Next up, 3 cantankerous NPCs in a room. Run and shoot, 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 run and shoot! I feel so Gankwill right now. Ilana, why have I done this to myself? Why? Every part of this was awful for all the reasons you might imagine, and you know what? After everything I just went through, I couldn't bring myself to do this just yet. So I went to Ilium Lois first. Ava was honestly a welcome change of pace. Just focusing on one enemy with wide openings that can't close the distance that much was really refreshing. Sure, I did die once or twice, but I felt pretty calm compared to the previous few encounters. The final shot to Ava's skull landed beautifully. I want to thank this cat for allowing me to Ava break. After clearing the snowstorm, I went through the level until I could get that other Greatbow I mentioned earlier, the twin-headed Greatbow. This bow apparently has the highest damage of any in the game, but the firing speed is meant to be quite slow. We upgrade it to +5, and I try Ilana again. So, yeah, this bow is even slower and does take more stamina per shot. It does do more damage, 412 versus the 384 from the Dragon Slayer bow, but I don't think damage is really the issue. It's how often I get punished for daring to try and fire my bow. So remember earlier when I said I was not going to bother with the bows that required farming? Well, one of them is the Elon Greatbow, which apparently is the fastest one in the game, and it turns out there is one of them lying around in the old Iron King DLC, which I was unaware of up until now. Upon testing it, it does indeed fire a lot faster. I really wish I'd gotten this earlier because it probably would have saved me a lot of pain. So testing it out against Alana, each shot does around 50 points less damage than the Dragon Slayer Greatbow, but with the speed and stamina we're left with after each shot, this means I can avoid damage more easily. So I decided this was definitely a fight that merited a bright bug. With this, I got a good number of shots off right at the beginning, and she was down to about 2/3 health by the time she summoned her first friend, which was unfortunately Velstad. I debated trying to kill Velstad initially, but realized it would just take too many hits, so just focusing on Alana, getting shots off, and avoiding damage was much easier now. She did summon the skeletons when she had about 1/3 health remaining. This last part was still intense, but I felt like focusing solely on Alana was the best approach. I was able to get the shots off, keep moving, and just wait for prime opportunities to fire when they came along. This was the ultimate game of patience, but thankfully my resolve held, and I landed the final shot just as she went to teleport. I need a squalor day after this. For Sin, I did try the twin-headed Greatbow again, but honestly it's just too slow. I did crack out the Dragon Slayer Greatbow one last time, as it did just feel thematically appropriate to use for Sin. This again was probably the least painful boss of this DLC, and I kind of enjoy it, but maybe that's just a case of Stockholm Syndrome. Okay, so only the Ivory King DLC remains. Let's finish this. We enter the frigid outskirts and speed past the Red Phantom Golem that New Game Plus adds outside the Fog Gate. With the Elon Greatbow, the Twin Kiddies fight was pretty okay honestly. I actually got Lud down to about 1/3 health by the time Zalin joined the fight. This was pretty alright overall, probably because it only took about 6 hits to kill Lud, and then we just follow our usual strategy for Zalin. Despite my state of near catatonia, we're still pushing through. Barely. We kill the Tom Hanks Witch Donna, free the knights, and it's now time for the other remaining boss that really concerned me. You know what though? The knight phase was probably the best of any of the cycles. Even though the Elon Greatbow is weaker than the other Greatbows, it's still doing a lot more damage than the bows or crossbows we used previously, and it took out the knights quite easily with our one remaining knight still at a good level of health by the time the king popped up. I smashed a bright bug as the Ivory King entered the fight. Our knight died quickly, but he did take some of the heat so I could get shots in. I mainly followed the same strategy as the previous cycle, only attacking when I got behind him, dodging through his jump attacks, and so on. Honestly, it might just be because I'm used to this fight now, but this was nowhere near as bad as some of the other DLC fights. In a great finish, the second to last shot actually staggered him, allowing me to smash one more right into his vertebrae and end the last of the DLC fights. Okay, there's still more bosses in the base game, but honestly, none of them really worry me, so this is a victory lap. We enter this old man's dark chasm, take great joy in blasting these phantoms off the edge. Seriously, this is so cathartic. This one here just kept walking into headshots. Heads up buddy, Darklurker was a little tricky, especially finding opportunities to attack when he splits. Usually, one of them flying up in the air to do the laser is a good opportunity, as it keeps them busy with an easy to avoid attack. Running and taking pot shots is a way of life at this stage. With a few more shots, we skewer up a delicious lurky dinner, and all the optional bosses are dead. So that just leaves Nashandra and Audia. Here's a fun fact. If you shoot Nashandra while she fires her laser, she shakes and the laser can randomly hit you. So that's fun. Otherwise, this was the usual keep distance, fire arrows, avoid her easy to dodge attacks, and just keep shooting. And Nashandra O gets killed shortly after. Now Audia, being the final boss of the final cycle, is clearly the hardest boss in the game. At this point, I was too drained and weak to finish him, so I had to use my break glass in case of emergency. I brought in the cavalry, summoning my buddy Cetra so he could assist me with his greatbow. Let's do this. Curse you, Audia. I hereby vow you will rue this day. Behold, a true soul's warrior, and I, JK, your fears made flesh. Solid of branch you might be, foul tree, but I will riddle with holes your rotten bark with a hail of harpoons, with every last drop of my being. Audio the tree, you shall haunt me no longer! Before choosing the ending, I saw a phantom of some other person also doing a greatbow run. Why? Why? I went to seal myself away like I do at the end of every run and basked in what I just went through. That greatbow cycle was honestly the toughest of any amongst these runs, although probably would have been easier if I got the Elon greatbow right away, but oh well. Content, am I right? But the trilogy is finally complete. Will there be more Mega Archery runs in other games? Perhaps, but not for a while, and I probably also need a break from Dark Souls 2. I really hope some kind of contest doesn't come up that I'm forced to take part in right after this. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider subscribing and turning on notifications so you can get hit up whenever I do some other madness like this again. Drop me a comment to let me know if you try a Greatbow run in Dark Souls 2 yourself. Until next time though, I've been JK Leeds, have a good one, and see ya.